Just before Fall Guys came out, we discussed the creation of one of its hardest minigames, Slime Climb, with lead game designer Joe Walsh and junior level designer Joseph JJ Jewson. 2 months later, on the eve of Fall Guys Season 2, we invited the pair back to talk through a level that might just take Slime Climb's crown. This is how Mediatonic created Night Fever, your new favourite level to fear.
Night Fever is, I guess, familiar in a sense that it's a race level. It's kind of one of our big 60-player race to the finish line, the top 75%. One of the things we're doing differently for this was bearing in mind we knew that this was going to be dropping after people had kind of got to grips with these kind of levels and had got quite good at them. And so we thought, let's make one for these players who've conquered everything else so far and do a really hard version of that. So yeah, so on a kind of like smaller scale, we have a lot of new obstacles in Season 2 and a lot of these are kind of showcased in this level. So we have kind of rotating spike log, and we have these scythes that swing really fast, and we have these massive log swings with spikes on them that are trying to get you. And so when we were looking at this level, it was really about like, how can we show these off in a difficult way, and also in a way where it's kind of back-to-back obstacles. Like more than our other races, it's very, you can fall off at any point. There are some bits that I still find really hard and I'm falling off all the time. So yeah.
There are just a couple of obstacles in game shows that we'd seen when we were researching Fall Guys in general. So like one of the things we looked at is Richard Gere in The First Night, I believe it's called, goes through this epic swinging obstacle course of like swinging scythes, and that was in our brains like, that's pretty good, we should probably use that. And then the other one is this TV show called Raven that used to exist back in the day, and it had this thing called the Way of the Warrior, where the person who was like rubbish at Raven would get a go at completing this obstacle course in order to qualify. Like for those who don't know, it's like a kids TV show with like a high fantasy style stuff and an amazing Scottish host, and it's just like a great obstacle course with some really scary looking obstacles. And I think we just had really good ideas for medieval obstacles that felt too good to put into the launch game, because it felt like we could do a whole season just around medieval stuff. And I think Night Fever is like a greatest hits of all of our favorite medieval obstacles from these shows that we like.
The first step of kind of working on a level like this was basically taking those obstacles and brainstorming around different sections that would fit them. There are some obstacles that it feels very natural, like what you're going to be doing with them. For the scythe, for example, they're like, well, you're going to be running through, at least to start with, you're going to be running through a row of these scythes. And then it was kind of like, okay, well, how do we make that interesting? How do we make that feel like Fall Guys? Because we obviously still want it to feel like it's a game show and this is an obstacle course. So I spent a few days doing that and kind of put together a document of just like, these are some ideas for sections. The obstacle designs were so good that it was like, they kind of made themselves, like a lot of this. We realized quite early on that what we were doing through the ones that I'd chosen, there was a lot of basically balancing. And it was just kind of like, oh, well, you're either running along a beam and avoiding scythes, or you're running along a beam and avoiding the swinging log, or you're running across this spike log. And it's like, okay, well, it's a bit overboard on balancing. We then kind of took it back a little bit and looked at different ways to use these obstacles that weren't necessarily just about staying on a tight beam. One of the things I knew at the start of, even actually before we started, probably before we even had the obstacles, was I knew that I wanted to drop halfway through the level, and like a slimy drop, like kind of reverse to the end of Hit Parade, where you're going up and there are the things move across. It's like, let's give people the opportunity to just go down. It's a fun moment halfway through. And so that kind of formed the basis of the structure. Once we had that on paper and we were happy with that, we went into the blocking out phase, and I would like make these sections separately. It's interesting. It's an interesting way to make a level, especially a level like this that is so pretty big and quite long, is that you have no idea how any of the sections are really going to play or feel until you have the whole thing together. You know, I could go down that little slide on its own. It's like, well, great. Does it feel like I earned that in the level? And does it feel like it was, you know, it's actually fun in conjunction with the other stuff? So you kind of have to make it all to then know if these sections are going to work. And we had one section which had these giant log swings, and it was kind of like a maze that you would be going through under the log swings. And on paper, it looked quite cool. It felt like you'd be able to make some interesting choices and kind of jump across. And then when I actually got in editor, like, I mean, it was a very... It probably should have been something I saw before, but like, the log swings were just hitting each other because they were massive and there's no space. And so it was just it was so cramped, and it just didn't really work as a section. And I was kind of playing around with it a bit. But I think you get that kind of inherent feeling now. I think having worked on these levels for a long time, we just know like this doesn't feel Fall Guys, and it's not going to work. I think we realised like we don't need that many because they're so big and so tricky to get past that 2 is enough. So we kind of like, we have this massive half pipe with loads of holes in it, and you've got to avoid these giant log swings. And I think it's much more enjoyable than the original section we wanted to make.
It's like more of a skill check, I think, this one. Like it's definitely harder, and I think it creates this nice image of like storming the castle, which is something we talked about really early on, is that we wanted the finish line to be these 2 big crenellated towers, and it's like a horde of badly dressed, wacky, overweight Fall Guys charging through. You know, it just seemed like the right thing, and we kind of wanted to, just for this one at least, really like funnel players together and have them getting in each other's way and tripping over each other and stuff like that.
I think when you think you've mastered how to make a Fall Guys level, like it kind of changes because people master this stuff and get better at it and are like, well, where's the new challenge? What's the next new thing for me to tackle in this game? Part of that is we've been doing this kind of level variation stuff where we've got like different versions of the levels we know. Having these new obstacles, having these season 2 stuff, like we can continue to kind of just like, you know, the season 2 drop isn't the end of all of like, you know, how we can use this stuff. So yeah, I think it kind of like just gives us a really good platform for the future.
I do think we're asking more of players with season 2 for sure, both in these levels and then later on when we bring these obstacles elsewhere in the game. I think it's going to be really exciting to see people try and master these ones.
If every race level was as hard as Night Fever, I don't think the game would be as fun as it is. But I think when you can kind of sprinkle this into the mix of levels that are already there, you really give like different play styles and different people the opportunity to shine or have fun. One of the things we're thinking about when we're making our levels now, which is kind of different, is how we're going to remix this more down the line. We know exactly how the system works and we know what's fun. We know what people like. I think the thrill of it is those surprises where like moments that you didn't expect to see that in this level because you know it so well. We're leaving these sections, giving them more space to be able to play with in the future.
I dread to think what you've got up your sleeve for Night Fever remixes.
Some really good stuff.